Welcome to another edition of the WCPO High School Insider podcast. I'm your host, Mike Dyer, and this High School Insider podcast is presented by our local Greater Cincinnati and Northern Kentucky Chick-fil-A restaurants, where the play of the game is always chicken. Log into the Chick-fil-A app for easy contactless ordering. Here we are, week 3 of the Ohio high school football season. I have a conversation with Kentucky High School Athletic Association Commissioner Julian Tackett coming up a little bit later, as Kentucky starts its football season this Friday night, September 11th. But let's get back to Ohio. Plenty of storylines as we enter week 3, believe it or not, of the season here. And I want to bring in Talawanda head football coach Larry Cox and also Talawanda senior running back and linebacker Tyler Teeters to the WCPO High School Insider podcast. And a big victory for the Brave on Friday night, 17-7. Win at Harrison, the first time in 25 years, believe it or not, that Talawanda has defeated Harrison. And Coach, let's just start with you. Let's talk about that momentum from this past weekend and how it carried into Labor Day weekend. What was that like for you and the players and the entire coaching staff?
Well, obviously that's a really neat win. I mean, we respect everything about Harrison, the tradition that they have. It's one of those things where we didn't go in with the mindset of let's beat Harrison. We went in with the mindset of just carry out the game plan and whatever happens, happens. Like I said, obviously that was a great win for the kids. I was real happy for the kids. Just like you alluded to, hard to believe week 3. It's nice that we've had 3 weeks, knock on wood, without any hiccups. But I'm just so happy because of, what the kids endure. And everything that has gone into this pandemic. And it's just, I think they've come to appreciate every little practice, every little game, every little moment that they get. So obviously, again, proud of the win. But it's one step in this season. So we just got to keep trying to find a way to improve. And, as I told the kids, we still have room for improvement.
Tyler, let's go over to you a little bit. You and Coach social distancing here a little bit, and appreciate you fitting me in right before practice here. But I know you want to look ahead to Ross, obviously, but just maybe a quick thought on Friday night, what it was like for you and your teammates.
I thought it was a great win. Our guys did a good job. As Coach said, we still have a lot of room for improvement. Definitely haven't played our best game yet. Watch some film, fix some things this week, and go and make improvements to come back better this week than we were last week.
Coach alluded to the fact that just the uniqueness, and everybody's talked about that around the entire state of Ohio, obviously, of this season and everything. Can you tell me about just maybe the challenges, but also the sense of gratitude that you've had maybe just going and playing this entire season?
We're all extremely thankful that we got to play so far this year, and hopefully we can finish out the whole season and go into the playoffs without any hiccups in the road. And the environment's a little different this year without all the fans and the student section. But the reality is once you get on the field, you kind of tune it all out and you just kind of play the game.
How unique is it? Do you catch yourself maybe glancing up there a quick second just to see if there are any of your other students there?
Maybe before the game, but once the game starts, it's pretty much locked in and focused.
Coach, I'll go back to you for a quick second. Just the community feel around the Talawanda football program all around Oxford. And, it's got to be a renewed sense of pride from obviously you took over this program December of 2018. The Brave were 5-35, I believe, the past 4 seasons leading up to when you were hired. Just talk a little bit about the turnaround, Coach, if you could, and the renewed sense of pride around the community.
Well, I think it starts with kids. That in the end, all the credit goes to them. I think they wanted to do what it takes to win. They just actually wanted to be held to a standard. And they've answered every challenge we've thrown at them. And I couldn't be more proud of the kids. Because I think once you get the kids to buy in, the community's going to buy in because the community's always going to be about the kids. And these kids have done a great job. We still, we've got places to go, for lack of a better term. But at the same time, I always tell them we're not where we've been, but we're not where we're going to be. And it's only through diligence and hard work and following the plan and the process that they'll get there. And it's nice to hear the positive comments in the community. And, as Tyler alluded to, it's a little different this year because you don't hear as much because, they're not there, which good, bad, or otherwise, that's okay. As I told the kids at the beginning of the year, all we have is each other. As we walk in the football facility, all we have is the players, the coaches, the support staff, our trainers, doctors, things like that. And together, we're doing that. Now, obviously, it's a little more than that because the parents, there's going to be some intrepidation with everything going on, and justifiably so. So, with the new processes, I think there's a level of trust. But, obviously it's nice to bump into people and hear the nice wins and things like that. But like I said, in the end, I'm happiest for the kids. And I think the kids really, they do talk about a renewed sense of pride, a renewed sense of what's possible, and where can we go. And you see them fighting a little bit for that. So that's been very gratifying for me.
Before we talk about Ross here a little bit, maybe just go back to some of the standout players on both sides of the ball, Coach. Just who you've been impressed with. We've seen the stats and everything, but certainly you've had some players really step up for you in these past two games.
Well, it's been interesting because we did graduate a really good senior class last year. And it's one of those where, a few people are like, you'll have to go in, retool. And, it's been more of finding the right pieces of the puzzle and putting it together. When I look at, we do have a few two-way players, Tyler being one. And Tyler's sort of been one of those ground level guys from day one. And, obviously he started as a quarterback when he was a sophomore. And it's one of those things where he sees where the value is and where he can help the team. And he's always been a team first guy, but he's one of them. If I just start like from an offensive perspective that played both ways, Jonathan Richter at tight end and outside linebacker, Nathan Deathridge at defensive tackle and offensive tackle. As I go down the line, Andrew Miller, who's offensive guard, but he's a backup defensive tackle. As I keep going down to the other tight end, Grady Holmes is a tight end and our free safety. DeAndre, both a Strevelee, halfback and corner. So you can see we've got, 5 or 6 guys that, and I think they're starting to wear that as a badge of honor as opposed to anything. And, it's, as I tell the guys, the best are going to play regardless of which side of the ball you're on. So, and I think, again, it's something that the kids have bought into. I think it's easy to watch major college football or, professional football. Whoa, I should only be going one way. And the reality of our situation is, if the best are going to play, this is what's going to happen. Now, if we can get someone coached up and ready to play and give them a spell, we do have some of those players that, can step in when needed. Casey Turman is another one who starts at corner, and he'll come in and spell Tyler at running back if he needs it. And he's really stepped in and has done a great job there. DJ Morris Williams, he's our starting nose guard, but he can step in at fullback if he needs to. So, there's a lot of pieces to the puzzle. We just sort of got to move it around. And when you look at guys like Grady Holmes and Jonathan Richter and Braden Wright, who's our quarterback, well, they didn't even play football last year. So, we're getting we're getting other athletes to come out now. And I think that's good because, we want kids to play as many sports as you can and come out and see how you can fit within the organization. And it's been a real positive experience for them.
Tyler, what's that been like for you? Because you've seen obviously the ebb and flow of this program and the losses, but also the wins now coming. And what's it been like? Just give me a sense of just around the school, around the community. You've been a part of this for quite some time now. So what's this been like for you?
It's been an uplifting experience. Came in freshman year, I believe we went 1-9. Wasn't a great year for the team. Sophomore year, we went 2-8. Coach Cox comes in last year, goes 7-3. It's a real big jump. The guys really got, like, every win built more and more momentum, and everyone started, like, seeing the potential that we can reach and where we really can be, and that we weren't just like a average football team, and that we had potential to be great.
Was it even more psychological than physical in some ways? I mean, just that winning culture that you hear about at all levels of football. Can you talk about that?
I think it probably is, to be honest, because a lot of it was just like, the football team, they're not very good this year, or just like that kind of stuff going on around school or in the community. But then once we started winning last year, towards the beginning of the year, the culture started looking up. It was more like, oh, great job on Friday, and go get them this week. And you had a lot more support, and kind of like a snowball effect as it built up.
Be honest, I've known Coach Cox for quite some time. He was 21 years there at Lakota West. I didn't cover all those years, but what's he like pregame speeches and just trying to get you guys to get after it?
It's very straight to the point. It's more about, as he was just talking about earlier, it's not more like, it's not really, we're here to, like he said earlier about beating Harrison. It's more like we're going to stick to the game plan, and we're going to do the little things right, and we're going to be really good at what we do, and then the wins and losses will take care of themselves.
You didn't tell him about all the quotes you and Andrew Miller copied down, have you?
Very diplomatic answer, I could tell.
Oh, yeah.
Well, Coach, what obviously a big Butler County matchup Friday night versus Ross. Coach, what are your first thoughts on facing the Rams?
Well, they're big and they're physical. They come off the ball. Their offensive line is really, it is a large offensive line, and they just like to come off and move you. Their fullback does a great job of falling forward, as I say. He gets those positive yardages. I tell people, if you're 6 foot tall and you fall forward, you're going to gain 2 yards. And if you take a step, you've now gained, 3 to 4. And then CJ Bowes, their quarterback, is very, very elusive. He's an outstanding running back as well as quarterback. So, he's definitely a dual threat type kid. And, so they present issues, defensively. They remind me a lot of us. They're running a 3-4. They're slanting and angling. They're moving around. They're not letting you get a good shot on them. They play hard. It's one of those backyard rivalries. And, Coach Commons does a great job getting his kids prepared. And, as I tell the kids, don't dwell so much on what Ross does. Dwell on what we have to do. Because in the end, that's who controls how well we play. We do. And that's sort of been always our message week in and week out. But, we have a lot of respect for Ross and where coach has taken him. So, we obviously it's gonna be a great game.
Tyler, I know it's a 6-game regular season. I realize everybody gets into the postseason, but in some ways, do you feel like every week is a playoff week in some sense?
In a way, yeah. Because when we get into the playoffs, it'll only be week 7 of like a normal season. So we just want to build up the momentum and just start playing as like a playoff mindset and playoff contenders, and just play it as we want to keep going and make a run into the playoffs.
Great. Well, Coach, I want to leave you maybe with a quick thought here. Going back to we talked about your 21 years there at Lakota West, as we kind of wrap up the discussion about Talawanda football. A little bit in the news, Indianapolis Colts center Ryan Kelly signed a contract extension last week. And I know you coached Ryan. I know you're still close with him. And I know he actually spoke to the Talawanda football team in the preseason as well. But, Coach, how happy are you for Ryan's news there this past week?
Well, obviously, that's a huge deal because, as I once talked to him about that before, you're not talking about affecting, Ryan, his future wife, Emma, the family. You're talking about affecting generations. And you can point back to that. And I'm just, proud of the man he is, let alone the football player he is. I think there's all kinds of talented people that didn't make it to the league, for one reason or another. Ryan made it to the league because he's talented and he's got outstanding character. And it's proof that if you do things right, you'll get rewarded. I didn't get a chance to tease him because the next day Deshaun Watson got almost the same type of contract, but I think there was an extra zero on at the end. So, that old offensive line and quarterback deal. But I think, happy for the whole family. His mom and dad, Dave and Ann, are just great people. And you're just proud to see that, things are going right for good people. You do good things enough, it turns out good for you. And that's what I'm happiest for him.
I know you had a Zoom call with some of the players. Tyler, were you on that by chance this past spring? Okay. What did you learn to hear from a guy like Ryan? I mean, what was his message to you guys?
A lot of it is just about his work ethic and being a hard worker and everything you do, and how Coach said about just being like a good overall man in general. And it's about more than just like football.
How did you take that to heart? I mean, why was that important for you to hear that?
Personally, I've always worked hard and everything, and my mom and dad work hard every day. So I've kind of grown up around that whole basis of having a good work ethic. But it comes to show how Coach said that if you just do the right things and be a good person, it'll come back to reward you in the end.
Great. Talawanda senior running back and linebacker Tyler Teeters and Talawanda head football coach Larry Cox. Really appreciate your guys' time and perspective, and best of luck to the Brave on Friday night.
Well, thanks for having us.
Thanks, Mike. I appreciate you, buddy.
Thank you, guys. Well, again, you could tell the amount of pride that Talawanda head football coach Larry Cox and senior Tyler Teeters have within the program this year. 2-0 start for the Braves, so excellent matchup with Ross on Friday night as well. I want to remind everybody that this High School Insider podcast is presented by our local Greater Cincinnati and Northern Kentucky Chick-fil-A restaurants, where the winning play is free chicken. Log into the Chick-fil-A app for easy contactless ordering. Up next, the conversation I had with KHSAA Commissioner Julian Tackett as Kentucky high school football starts its season this Friday night. Julian, thanks for taking a few minutes.
Not a problem. Glad to do it.
Well, obviously, a lot to talk about here, but first of all, let's get into the August 31st letter from the Kentucky Board of Education. Obviously, they sent a letter to the Board of Control urging the expansion of COVID-19 guidance for the 18-member committee there. I haven't seen a formal response, but maybe it's been issued already, but what has been kind of the discussion after that letter was sent among you and the Board of Control?
Well, we've talked to several members of our board, but more than anything, we've reached out to the Department of Ed, who works for the State Board of Ed, trying to get some clarity. Had a really good meeting yesterday. I think that I don't know quite how to say it. There may have been some things that were already contained that they didn't really realize till we showed them where they were in the resumption manual. And I think that we obviously accept the letter. It's a peer-to-peer letter. So it's it's a tough time because nobody's ever navigated this kind of thing before. And while we can't look in the crystal ball and give perfectly clear answers, neither can they. And we're all trying to work and continually adjust. I know I've looked at the 39 or 40 documents that are on the KDE website for the resumption of school that change just about all the time. So, I mean, we're in that same boat. There's a lot of new information on the landscape. We're certainly able to watch some states that started a little bit earlier and see if we need to make any adjustments. But we'll continue to work with them. And I suspect if there are any gaps that they perceive and what they'd like to see addressed, we'll work toward trying to meet in the middle somewhere.
As we record this just a few days from the start of, obviously, a lot of the fall sports seasons starting September 7th, cross country, field hockey, soccer, and volleyball, with football officially starting September 11th. Give me a sense maybe just around the Commonwealth of just the anticipation of those fall sports seasons. It's been quite of a unique spring, summer, and early fall here. But for those sports to get going, what's the feeling like?
Well, it has been, the feedback we're getting is kind of half mixed between total excitement and trepidation. I mean, nobody really is sure of everything they're doing. One of the things that we did in our guidance from moment one was recommend kind of phasing things in. Let's don't start trying to be ready for the end of the year, whether it's coaching, whether it's setting up games. Let's try things. Let's experiment a little bit because they may work differently. I watched several football games last weekend that happened to be on national TV, and there was varying levels of compliance, let's just say, with all of the COVID safety standards. And we've continued to try to preach those standards. As I watch some of the out-of-state schools, when they get in that setting of the actual play, it's tough to remember what you've taught yourself over the summer and some of the restraint. I watched a game that was outstanding football game. It was decided in overtime, and they kind of forgot all about the health standards toward the end. But that's probably going to take some time to get it ingrained into people and get everybody to settle into a new way of dealing with it, at least a new temporary way of dealing with it.
Here in the greater Cincinnati, Northern Kentucky area, obviously covering a lot of Ohio high school sports, and they have an inspectors program, as it were, that goes out to random football games and writes up reports if need be. Does Kentucky have anything similar to that? Do you anticipate that?
Well, it's obviously a possibility if it was ever needed. I think at this point, thankfully, that was funded by their state, which helps. They got some help in that. We may end up seeing the need for that. Right now, the feeling that we get is people are so excited about the opportunity to play. They would, it's like, just tell me when and where. We think that the participants, the coaches are, unbelievably ready for compliance. The worry is, of course, who you bring in that hasn't been in those environments. Whatever level of fans that schools vote to allow to bring in, et cetera, are they going to spend all their time arguing about whether or not there's a virus, or are they going to spend all their time promoting the 17 to 18-year-olds that you're trying to give the opportunity to play?
Now, from my understanding, attendance policies, it's up to the local health department in each area. Do you see that changing? Do you have any numbers just in terms of what that standard might be for attendance at football games, for example?
It is varying, and part of the reason it needs to vary is that our facilities aren't the same. Having been around this a couple of semesters, when you look at it, the football field at a particular school might all have one access going in and out to a small set of bleachers, and another school may be able to handle multiple entrances and still have a few people in there. You've really they've got to handle it themselves. It's a burden. It's a lot of responsibility. And I think there's frankly some people out there who would prefer all the decisions be made for them. Unfortunately, in the very few states that have seen that happen, what happens is the decisions, so everybody wants somebody else to make the decision, but then they want to disagree with the decision. So it's a little bit of a catch-22, and Kentucky's very much a local control state in so many things, and the facility issues just kind of bring it up and remind us that that's probably a good idea in this case as well.
Do you have an example, maybe some of the bigger, quote-unquote, bigger schools for football stadiums, as it were? Because here in Ohio, it's 15% or 1,500, the less of the two. So do you have a range of what that could be just for some of these bigger football stadiums? We
have it in our guidance that they should look for a maximum of 20%, counting everybody that's not on the field, for events. But that's also just a suggestion because they may not want to go that high. And I have heard a number of schools. We have a school 30 minutes from Lexington that's not going to have fans their first game. They're in an older stadium. They kind of want to see how everything goes with the games themselves and then move on to fans. It's probably a very wise approach. There's another district not too far from here that's given 2 tickets per player, cheerleader, and band member. And there's others that are looking at higher limits. I think that's all the more reason why it has to be a local decision. You can't, what we've heard, and I guess we've listened to, is that you can't just have local control over the easy decisions. Sometimes you've got to make them that are more challenging, and nobody's better equipped to do that than our school people. They have shown that since they pivoted on a dime in about 2 days and totally changed the way we deliver education in March. They've had to deal with post-year or end-of-year ceremonies. They've had to deal with graduations. They've had to deal with all kinds of things. So they are very adept at working with our outstanding local health departments and seeing what really can work out in this time. And it's just going to look different. There's no doubt about it for at least these first few weeks. And let's see how it goes as we head into the 3 different segments of each season.
How is the KHSAA maybe giving guidance just to actual game days or game day competitions, as it were? Because all throughout the summer, we've heard, meetings and Zoom calls and rules and regulations and guidance. But when it comes down to it, like you mentioned, watching games on TV, I mean, this is real life stuff. What guidance, what advice do you give to maybe an athletic director or a coach that is just going into this, like you said, maybe feeling a mix of emotions, excitement, but also some trepidation as well?
Well, the biggest thing is, and I think it'll be easier on our newer people than it will be the veterans, because the veterans can't simply take the cash box, go out front and set up ticket sales and run it like normal. It's not going to happen. They've got to watch the attitude of the fans. They've got to watch, they've got to look for social distancing, et cetera. That's why early on, when we divided in June, when we issued our information actually in May for June and July for the summer workouts, we were very specific about some of the safety things, the social distancing, the constant hand washing, the mask. Started getting used to them then, and of course the order came through, or the recommendation came through, that everybody wear them, and we had already phased them in by now. So we've tried to learn not only from what's going on in the schools and get that out early. It made it easier for us that we didn't have to make a bunch of wholesale changes at the start. When we sent our game guidance out, it was really just a matter of amplifying what was already out there. And that was convenient, I think, for our schools. But we have spent the last 4 months on different calls and meetings, whether it's our athletic director and coach groups or other state associations. We have probably never been a more unified group of state associations than we are right now. And that doesn't mean we all have the same decisions, because we all had different influences. In some states, the governors have had more influence. We have had great collaboration from day one with our governor's office, with our lieutenant governor's office, with our public health people, to where we could kind of chart our course. But we also knew that first and foremost, we were not going to be first, we were not going to be last, and we were going to try to observe what other people were doing. And that has really been a strategy that worked to where I think our schools are primed and ready for participation.
You mentioned the past 4 months, Julian, and just bigger picture question here. Dr. Carissa Niehoff of the National Federation of State High School Associations, she had a quote just saying, "Planning high school sports and performing arts programs as the COVID-19 pandemic continues is the biggest challenge any of our leadership has ever faced." What has this been like for you, just personally, over these past few months?
24/7 doesn't begin to describe it. Trying to just be a constant sponge and flow through for information, trying to watch what's changing. The difficult part about this is most any subject, well, part of the difficulty, most any subject that you take on, you can intensify your research, you can really get a body of knowledge, and you can make a decision. But your research that you've studied doesn't normally change. In this case, it changes daily, sometimes hourly, what recommendations are. We have seen regulatory changes, we've seen CDC changes, we've seen federal government changes, we've seen things that may or may not be complicated by the current election year. We've seen school districts that can't all do the same thing. We would all like to have a COVID testing protocol like the Southeastern Conference has, and let's test everybody 3 times a week and be sure that it's just pristine out there. And unfortunately, that's a financial burden and an operational burden that schools can't handle. But more than anything, it steps into an area where the parents have kind of risen up in some areas, and you've got all the talk originally was we're going to have some restrictions till we get a vaccine, and now the argument is about we may or may not want to take a vaccine, or we may not want to take it early. And so every factor seems to be constantly changing, and that's just something that I have jokingly said all summer long, that whenever I was blessed to be able to get a couple of 3 college degrees at different times and different levels, and whenever we studied being an administrator during a pandemic, I missed that class because it was simply not, there's no way to train for it. And, Dr. Niehoff's right. It's an understatement, but she's right. It is certainly something that probably because of that constant change, we also have trouble. Our state is a little different maybe than others, and maybe exactly like your coverage area states, but we've had such a turnover in administrators, and the young administrators don't necessarily have the protection that comes with experience. They can't make as many autocratic decisions as maybe some of our veteran decision makers can. And then you factor in the fact that in many cases our local boards of education are influenced by people who elected them. That's what representative democracy is. So, their knowledge base might be different. They may have different questions than the superintendent has, which is different than the coach has. The bottom line that we have tried to stay focused through all of this, I have used the expression lately, I feel like we're conducting a circus in the middle of a tornado, but the focus has been on the students. And if we can get that focus together and do what's the best while realizing there's no perfect choice, we'll be okay with this.
Hard to think ahead, literally a week, let alone a few months or into next spring. But bigger picture, before I let you go here, just how do you think this impacts high school sports going forward? I mean, we hear, the opportunities that the states where their student athletes have been able to play or been able to at least start competing, just a sense of gratitude. But just kind of curious, maybe going forward, how this impacts just the psyche of coaches, ADs, student athletes, everybody involved in high school sports going forward.
I probably would use a baseball analogy real quick. I want to stand in the batter's box and think dead red, but I better be ready for the curveball. We're going to try to plan as though the 2021, although it will look different. One thing I have said the entire process since we shut down our girls tournament is that we really hope that 21-22 looks really close to 18-19. But 2021 is not going to look like anything we've ever seen. So we've got to plan methodically. We've got to be the best with the information we've got, but we have to be ready to pivot and adjust at a moment's notice. And it may be just as quick as that pitch coming in that was different than I thought it was going to be. So I think that's the challenge for all of us. We have to remain vigilant. We have to remain optimistic, and we have to be kid-centered. What we cannot do in our country is we cannot shut ourselves up in our houses till all this goes away. So Dr. Capilouto, president of the University of Kentucky, quoted someone else, but he made a comment that I literally have kind of taken to heart, in that we have a choice of battening the hatches and staying home till all this is gone, or living and navigating a COVID world. And I think we're at that point where we have to make very smart decisions, but none of those decisions are guaranteed.
HSA Commissioner Julian Tackett, really appreciate your time and perspective, and thank you once again for your insight.
Not a problem. Glad to do it.
Well, as you can tell, Kentucky high school sports starts this week with a great sense of anticipation as the high school football season starts in the Commonwealth this Friday night during the COVID-19 pandemic. I want to thank Julian Tackett, Commissioner of the KHSAA, for all his time and perspective as he kind of recounted all the challenges and looked ahead to see what the future holds for Kentucky high school sports. Also, a shout out to Talawanda head football coach Larry Cox and senior running back and linebacker Tyler Teeters for their perspective, and a preview of a big Butler County matchup against Ross on Friday night. I want to check out my story on WCPO.com about the new executive director at the OHSAA, that is Doug Ute. I'm going to be having more conversations with him as the week goes on. We'll have an update for you maybe later this week or on next week's episode as well. Thanks again for listening. We'll talk to you soon.